And welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Life from the Inside Out with Kris. And I'm here with Serge. And last time we talked about mindset mastery, and we were building on how to move beyond limiting beliefs. And Kris told a really interesting story about the chicken and the eagle, and how we can be limited by beliefs of our family or family system or society, and that there's much more available out there, and to put on our wings and soar. So I'm thinking we could build on that today, and but we'll say hi to Serge first.
Hey, Dan. Hope you're having a nice weekend. And here it's okay. It's actually very sunny today, or it was. Now it's dark, but it was very sunny, very nice. Little cold day, of course, but very nice, and it was enjoyable and very quiet as well. I was just busy on the computer.
I heard.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Serge and I are both pretty excited today. Yeah, so that's really interesting. And yeah, I was wondering. We are kind of having a little discussion about. People have described it as peak brainwave states, gamma brainwaves, peak performance states, and even some of the stories of how that those are used when Serge is channeling. And I'm wondering if there's some connections there with mindset. So who knows which direction Kris will go, but I'm interested to see what we'll put together.
Well, maybe I could just quickly, very briefly mention that when we gave a 3 or 4 day workshop outside of Phoenix, Arizona, some years ago, um, there was a psychiatrist there. Him and his family owned some of the properties we were on, and he was curious in using brain mapping software on me when I was speaking as Kris or just me. And for those of you who don't know, it involves putting something like a swimming cap with the little electrodes, about 100 electrodes. They're all connected to the scalp. And then with the software on the computer, they can measure brainwave activity. And for the longest time, it was always recognized to be 4 brainwaves or brainwave patterns. And they've expanded that now. So I was asked to just be still and just be me, just myself. And we're able to measure fairly normal brainwave activity, maybe a little bit sharper than the average individual, because I do have a very strong imagination. And so they were able to measure all of that. And I do have the snapshots here of the software showing the brainwave patterns. And then they asked me to go into my Kris trance, but not say anything. And I heard a friend of mine and the psychiatrist go, "Holy shite. The brainwaves peaked right into what's called gamma and super gamma, which are 2 of the more recent brainwave patterns that have been identified. And those particular patterns in me were active around the part of the brain that is in this side, which is where the communication center of the brain is supposedly located. Maybe there's a little Geraldine in there or something plugging in the phone calls. I don't know. um, or Ernestine, I think was her name. Anyways, so this is located in this part of the brain. And in a way, it sort of made sense because when I do get an acceleration of consciousness in relation to information Kris is delivering or sending to me, I do feel it more on here on this side. Sometimes others, but this is the main reception area for that stuff. And it was quite interesting to see, even to see the snapshots as well. Maybe why didn't I find them? I might even be able to either put them on the website or even they could be incorporated into the video.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're capable of doing that.
we are, Serge. So if you send
Okay.
those my way, we'll add those, and the viewers will
Yeah,
see them
we'll
in
see if I
just a
can
moment.
find them.
Yeah.
So, the brain is able to do far more than we've ever allowed it to do. Um, and yeah, quite possibly it's related to the different kinds of mindsets that we hold.
Very cool. And yeah, from what I know about it, the gamma brainwaves are faster, a faster pattern. So
Yep.
the
Yeah.
if beta is like this in between the waves, gamma starts to get shorter, and super gamma get shorter. And then when we sleep, you get into even longer
Yep.
patterns.
So you mentioned gamma short. Imagine super gamma. It's even shorter.
Yeah.
So it's also much more dense. And this, by the way, gamma and then super gamma is the state of brainwave patterns that's achieved by Zen Buddhists and meditators.
Yeah, and that was the other thing I was getting at that I think is interesting. People that get into like a peak performance state, so like a master concert pianist in the midst of that state where they're like, I've lost the sense of who I
Euphoria.
am, of
Yeah.
whatever,
Or a
and
marathon
you
runner
know
or anything like that.
yeah, they lose the separate,
Yeah.
I don't know what's me and where the piano begins and where the music begins, and they get into the state that they describe. They've done the same thing. Those gamma patterns are what is happening in the brain. So, yeah, at those times. And the question came about too, because I noticed a similar feeling in myself while I was preparing for the day, I'll say. And I noticed like a change in the mindset. And I'm like, oh, I think I'm getting into a peak performance state where all of a sudden I was able to imagine, a book chapter for a fiction writing that I was working on. It was like all of it was contained in a snapshot. Like it was all
Yep.
there. And then it kind of like slowed down, I guess maybe into slower brainwave patterns that I could kind of piece it together, but it started as this like really quick activity. So
Yeah. Similarly, like when I get what I call a download of data from Kris, it's big, it's fast, and when it hits my consciousness, then it's like parts of my consciousness start taking it apart. Things I can deal with now, things that can be used in the very near future, and things that'll be used later on. And it's like a time release capsule. Eventually, it works its way through. And there's probably some parts of it I'll never use, or Kris may never use, but the whole package is there.
yeah.
So, yeah, there's some interesting stuff to be explored in that area.
Well, and I'm wondering too, as we're describing this, if our viewers then, as they're watching this, might be able to recognize more in your own life when you're getting one of these downloads, one of these peak performance states. Because I think it takes some awareness of what it is, and because it can pass by pretty quickly if you don't kind of harness it or pay attention to it. So, yeah, interesting.
Anyways, so he's around.
Okay,
I
all
was
right.
I was going to say the old guy, but yeah, I did
time
anyways.
time for some gamma activity, I guess.
Yep, yep. Gamma, gamma, gamma.
Was that the old Ramon song, "Gabba Gabba Hey"?
Yeah. Now we trust that you are comfortable.
Very comfortable, thank you, Kris.
And we thank you for your consideration.
Oh, thanks as well.
Whether it is an alpha or a gamma consideration, we thank you for it.
Yeah, it's all good.
Mm. Your mention of different brainwave patterns your sciences have been exploring this perhaps since the mid or to later 50s and the 60s, and have been leading more and more studies and exploration into the subject matter of just what is occurring in the electromagnetic fields of the brain. This is what gives off those brainwave patterns. And we might like to add that each of the recognized brainwave patterns so far all have their various gradations, if you like, their cousins and their extended families. They are not necessarily something that is specifically fixed in time and space, because such activity, though it is, how do we say, recorded by the brain in terms of the patterns that you can measure, they do not originate in the brain, but in the mind. So your mention of gamma and super gamma and peak performance patterns is also of great interest, because as it leads into sharper cycles, because they are all based on cycles, that's why they are patterns. So they operate on cyclical patterns, each within their particular field. So you would have gamma and super gamma, and then there are others and others still. And they proliferate exponentially. Your instrumentation is not yet adapted to measure sharper patterns up to this point. And because your species as well is far too preoccupied with simple survival techniques and methods, you have yet yourselves to recognize that these other patterns also are functioning. So, as suggested, gamma and super gamma patterns are similar to what deep meditators, Zen Buddhists, Buddhist monks, and others who meditate profusely attain. This is in part due to the expansive effect of those patterns. Even though they are smaller and sharper, they are also more and more expansive. You can become aware, literally become aware, that you are a part of your physical environment. And we should rephrase that your physical environment, its physical symbolism, is an extension of your ideas of selfhood. It is part of your psychology. It is manufactured by specific energy patterns within your psyche. You are emotionally, intellectually, and otherwise generating very unique energy patterns into this expanded field that gets translated by your senses as your physical environment. Think of it this way. When Star Trek introduced artificial environments, do you recall that? Holodecks.
Yeah, I remember the holodeck.
So in the movie, of course, it is presented as the byproduct of machinery. But in the physical reality, it is the byproduct of your psychology and your physiology together, utilizing combination of both of those elements to project a sensed separation into the physical environment, as if somehow or other you and that physical environment are separate. That allows for the formation of your unique identity. In truth, the environment is part of what you are, not the other way around. You are not part of the environment, though it appears that way. But this environment actually is an extension of yourself. That is why, in some respects, you can give meaning to everything, because it is coming from you. Even at some deep, unconscious place, you can identify your relationship with all of the symbolism that you consider the external environment, nature, and so on and so forth. Beyond super gamma and others, you have yet sharper, denser signals that move into other areas of probabilities and the manufacturing of other selves. You refer to them as other focuses or probable selves, multi-reincarnational selves, whatever the labeling. You pick up those residual signals that are given off by deeper parts of yourself and express themselves as unique individualities, just as you are as well from their perspective. And you are still completely interrelated. Even though you are not aware at the surface most levels, there are deeper levels of your own psyche that also find a expression, a link with those other selves. You are, in many ways, almost like an gigantic cellular construct. Actually, it is a mental construct expressed in cellular form. Just as you are not aware of all the cells in your body that compose your form, whether it is skin, bone, muscle, blood, or other tissues and whatnot. This is also the result of a unique field of energy. And you have access, but at deep, deep layers, which would require more than the average individual is willing to give in terms of time and meditation to study. But at least intellectually, you may have an inkling as to what this is all about. You might be able even intuitively to respond and know that you are more than the sum of all of your parts. There is still more to you than meets the eye, as the saying goes. Does this all make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. I'm still wondering, and it is interesting you mentioned the connection between the meditation and some of the gamma brainwave states, because Dr. Joe Dispenza, he was part of the kind of law of attraction movement. He has studied people with and their brainwave patterns as they begin to meditate. And at first, they begin to get into the more relaxed states, the things like the alpha state and theta, in the meditations, and then with more practice, they begin to experience the gamma state. And I'm just wondering if there's something deeper to that, or does the meditation itself let us connect to that different aspect itself by getting into that relaxed state?
So all of the states, alpha, beta, theta, and all of the others, they're always in operation. They never end.
I see.
Otherwise, you are considered brain dead. So they always function. You can become aware through meditative states. And meditation is an actually extremely simple and very common practice.
Mm-hmm.
You are focusing on cutting up your vegetables and whatever you are going to make for dinner. You are focusing on having fun at the beach. Whether you recognize it or not, these are also meditative states. You have simply increased the attention when you do what is considered meditation, but you are always in various kinds of meditative states. Meditation and hypnosis are the same. You just do not recognize that this is the case. All it means, whether you are hypnotized or you are meditating, it means that you are effectively concentrating in such a way that all other stimuli is moved to the background of your experience, and your concentrated state fixes you in a particular point of time and space into a now. So in effect, you are always in a meditative or hypnotic state. It is not possible to have it otherwise. It is only considered classic meditation when you sit like a pretzel. But that is just one of its forms. And you can deepen your responsiveness to different brainwave patterns simply by extracting your attention at deeper and deeper layers from all sensory stimuli. All sense stimulation begins to get shut down. So you are less and less and less aware, perhaps, of people in the room or what is going on around you. Very much like a child that is considered a space cadet, has zoned out, does not hear mommy calling him 10 times for dinner because he is watching the cartoons. He heard, but his attention was on the cartoons. So everything else was removed, receded to the background until he recognizes, and he may think mom has called him for the first time, but she may have been calling him for 10 times. Does that make some sense?
It does. I have a clarification question, because what you said was that all of these patterns are there all at the same time. If I'm understanding that right. So if I think my understanding is then all of these patterns they're all present at all moments, but when we're measuring them, are we just measuring the predominant pattern in that moment? Like one of them's coming to the forefront? Is that what's happening? And they're all there all the time?
Due to the level of attention that you remove from external stimuli, then your attention gets drawn into internal stimuli. It is still responding to stimuli, but this time it is not triggered by anything in your physical environment. It is triggered by an inner environment. What is going on, say, in the field of your imagination, in your biophysical responses. Your breathing is slowed down, your heart rate is slowed down, you are calmer. Therefore, you may then be able to notice other activities that are going on in the mind that under normal conditions you pay no heed to whatsoever. It is still there. You just do not pay attention to what is going on in the other areas of your mind.
Got it.
Consider, for example, that you have a house with many rooms. Are you aware of everything that is going on in every room of the house all the time? Of course not. You are predominantly concerned with what is going on in the room where you are at. And you might be marginally aware of, say, someone getting dinner ready. And perhaps in another room, you know, one of your children might be on the computer or reading a book or playing with some toys. But other than that, you really do not pay much attention to the rest of the house. If you have 10 rooms and only 2 or 3 of them have activity, you have no concerns with the rest of the house. Unless, of course, a shelf is knocked over by the cat in one of the far off rooms. That's another issue. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So the whole house exists at once in that sense. But you just don't pay attention to all of it all the time.
Got it. Oh, that's interesting.
So your mind is extremely, we will use the word complex, not complicated. It is very complex. It is a wonderful tool. As we have mentioned, it also functions on associative principles. So the more you practice a deepening of your meditative state, the more you get that. And the idea that you can become aware of other levels of brainwave activity, it should not be and should not come as a surprise. You may have gamma and super gamma, but within gamma, you would have gamma A, gamma B, gamma C, gamma D, and maybe even gamma A-A. In super gamma, you would have the same thing. Super gamma A, this sounds like a song now, super gamma A, super gamma B, and then you might have super gamma AA, BB, and so on and so forth. The idea that your consciousness is somehow fixed in terms of linearity, past, present, future, is an illusion. It functions in a interesting, how do we describe this in words? Imagine a system of fractals that expand in all directions. Fractals now. So you know what fractals are. So imagine a system of fractals that spread out in all directions, occupying all available space. Fractals are never ending. So you could say that every level, alpha, beta, theta, and so on, gamma, super gamma, and others, and even the subsidiaries of gamma, gamma A, gamma AA, gamma B, gamma BB, and so on, they spread out in all directions of time and space so easily because there is an awareness in your mind at some layer that the apparent divisions of space and time are illusory. So everything exists in that manner all at once. You just do not see it because you operate within the parameters of a very specific sets of mindsets, as we described last time. Particular mindsets create fields of electromagnetic energy, which when concentrated upon, putting you in a trance, or shall we say, you put yourself in a trance, depending on the state of your mindset, you effectively block out everything else that does not conform to your state. Does that also make some sense?
It does, and I think we're getting towards the end of an episode here,
Ended.
Chris. So it
So
sounds like we're gonna have a lot to
simply,
build on.
shall we just simply say that in many respects, all of the particular mindsets that you juggle, all are biased to their own perceptions, and everything else gets filtered out. And with that, then we return, Joseph, to you and let you take your break.
All right. Thanks. We'll build on that next time.